One of the best ways to start a mutual aid organization is to create a pod map. Pod maps can also be useful for existing mutual aid organizations as a way to keep track of members and volunteers. Today, I'm going to show you how to create a pod map.
You can find this template on our website, or you can find others on Google, or even make your own. Once you have a template, the first step is to put your name in the center. The closer each of the surrounding circles is to your name, the more of a relationship you have with that person or group. Once your name is filled in, you can start filling in the circles immediately surrounding your name. In these circles, you should put the names of people who are in your immediate pod. Those are people who have either already agreed to help you, or those that you can already count on for help. Some examples are your partner or spouse, close friends, especially those that live in your community or city, and neighbors can be critical here too. Most mutual aid organizations are based around providing aid to their immediate community, so neighbors are a valuable asset to any mutual aid organization. Neighbors will also usually have a pretty good idea as to the specific needs that their community has, and they'll have firsthand knowledge of the problem that you are trying to address. Relatives can be helpful too, especially those that live in your community. There are two other bubbles to fill in, but at this point you probably get the picture. From here, we move on to the dotted circles, where you will put the names of people who are just outside of your pod, but can be moved into your pod with some conversations and some effort. These are people that you may not have approached with your idea, but who you think would nonetheless be interested in helping. In the first circle, I've put coworkers. Not everyone works in an environment where it would be wise or even appropriate to approach coworkers about spending time outside of work doing something like running a mutual aid society. However, you may have one or two coworkers who live in the same community that you do and feel motivated to volunteer. Another possibility are your peers and classmates. Whether you are in a school or you're an alum of a local high school, college, or graduate school, you may have met people in classes or clubs that live in your community or nearby and have the same set of ideals that you do. If you're still in school, it is worth checking to see if your school has a club dedicated to volunteer work. An additional resource are places of worship. Whether you are religious or not, there are members of churches, synagogues, mosques, and other places of worship who spend a fair amount of time volunteering. Some food drives, clothing collections, and other charitable activities are run exclusively by places of worship, and some of the same people may be willing to donate their time to your cause as well. I've also added here friends of friends, because everyone has met people that the friends know, and this type of relationship is exactly what this type of bubble in your pod map represents. It's the people that you know of, or have met once or twice, that you could get to know a little better with some effort. Next, we'll move into these shaded bubbles. Up until now, you have been filling each circle with a name or a group of names, but the shaded bubbles will usually be less individuals and more groups or communities, networks, any group that could be a resource for support, or sometimes it's helpful to put contact information for people within those groups. So first, and perhaps most obvious, are other mutual aid societies. Other mutual aid societies may have members or resources that could provide support. Next are volunteer networks. I've mentioned these a couple of times so far. These are the networks that you would find as a club in your school, as a group or a page online, or through a place of worship. Sometimes those take the form of phone trees. Finally, other community organizations can be a great way to meet your neighbors and find other volunteers for your mutual aid society. Again, these will be the people most familiar with the problems that you are trying to address. So now that you have filled in your pod map, what do you do with it? Let's first think of an issue to address. Say that I know that some of my neighbors in my community have a hard time getting food and groceries during COVID. Some can't go to the store because of their health, and some are out of work and cannot afford as many groceries as they need. So I pick food relief as my issue and look to my pod map to think about potential helpers. I first highlight the names of any neighbors on my map, the ones who are able to go to the grocery store and who might be able to pitch in financial help or a vehicle for delivery. I also have a few relatives in the area who'd want to help me, so I highlight any relatives who live near me. There's a church on the corner of my street that I know does clothing drives, so I highlight them because I think they have some members who are also members of the community that I'm trying to help. In addition, I know that my law school does events related to food relief, so I highlight volunteer networks and will contact my school as a part of that search. This is a good start, and I can highlight more people as I continue my search. You can definitely use your whole map, but you may also choose to limit your outreach based on what your mutual aid organization is trying to address. For instance, let's say that instead of COVID food relief, I wanted to create a mutual aid society that advocated for rent cancellation during the pandemic. This is more of a politically charged issue than food relief, so my pod map will look a little bit different when I go to use it. I first highlighted my partner because I know they have very similar political beliefs to me. They like being involved in politics, and they would be interested in this subject. I do not highlight my coworkers because I do not like bringing up politics at work. I next highlight my friends. I highlight even the friends that live in my home state 100 miles away because this particular issue involves phone canvassing, emailing, and other tasks which need not be local, and the issue applies to more than just my area. I also highlight my law school classmates because I know several people who are interested in policy and advocacy, and I want to get to know them better. I choose not to highlight some of my relatives, many of whom do not share the same political beliefs that I do. That's okay, and I will include them if I have a mutual aid society that is a less politically divisive issue. And I can keep highlighting from there. One thing that is important about including the people that you put in the dotted lines, like your classmates, is the possibility to get to know them better and to bring them closer to the center of your pod map. By talking to my classmates, for example, I learned that several of them want to work in mutual aid organizations. I want to help in future events, so I can move them to some of the solid circles. And now that they're in a solid circle, I know that I can rely on them for future events. And that's how you make and use a pod map. Thank you for listening, and good luck.